So I'm here in Substance Painter. Let's create a new project. When you start a new project in Substance Painter, you have to select your template. We have different ones here. We're going to use the standard PBR metallic roughness, which is the standard with the software. Because everything you do in Substance Painter is based on a model, you cannot begin a project without a file. So you select here the model we're going to be using. This is the model that we just exported from Maya. And then we can select the resolution of our texture. I'm gonna put 4K here. The normal map format is gonna be DirectX because I'm using Windows, and that's good. Okay, so we are here. Let's talk a little bit about the interface here. So as you can see, we have the model here. On the left, you have the 3D view of the model here. On the right, you have the 2D view of the UV. The UV that we created in Maya is here on each module. And you see here, we have the different materials because we exported the main character with one material, the sword with a separate material. So if you touch here, you're gonna switch in the 2D view where you're not gonna be seeing the character, you're gonna be seeing the UV of the sword. So we're gonna be actually working here with two different materials. So the rest of the interface is pretty kind of self-explanatory. Here on the left, we have the main tools to like paint tool, eraser tool, projection tool, polygon fill tool, a bunch of different tools that you can use to paint, kind of similar to Photoshop or any other painting software. Here you can control the size of the brush, the flow, etc. We have the menus here, file, etc. Here on the bottom, we have different libraries. So we can have different alphas, we have grunge, we have textures. The most important ones here are going to be the smart materials. We're going to be talking about this later, and the smart masks. And here on the right, we have below the texture, we have our layers. That's where we're going to be creating different layers with different smart materials to create our texture. We have the texture settings here where you can use this to bake the main textures that Substance Painter uses to create the procedural materials. And here we have some setup to do. So let's now we know. Oh yeah, and I forgot about here on the bottom right, you have the tool settings. Any tool you are going to be using, as well as the smart materials, you're going to see the attribute here. This is a very important part. So before we start working, I like to change some stuff here. The lighting you're seeing here is the character is based on the panorama you're using. We'll start with a basic panorama. You can actually see the panorama just changing the opacity here. You can even take the blur out, so it's pretty clear what is giving us the light. You have different ones to use different, and you have real-time reflections, real-time effect of the lighting. Those are HDR images that are used for lighting. I like to work with the traditional panorama, the standard one. I put more blur here in the half, and I actually sometimes like to work with a little bit of opacity so it's not totally black, but it's up to you. So it depends on what you want to do. So the first thing you need to do in Substance Painter, you need to come here in the texture set settings, and you need to click Bake Mesh Maps. This will create the basic mesh maps that are going to be used by Substance Painter to create the procedural materials. So it's going to use, for example, the curvature map and the ambient occlusion to find the edges of the geometry, so we can put like warm edges or dust or rust. So this is a pretty important step. You can make this a little bit bigger. It doesn't need to be the same of the final texture you're working on it, but could help. So let's do 2K here for 2K, no, like 4K here. And the only one we're not going to be using, the ID material here, because we baked a ID material in Maya, and we're going to bring back here so we can use to select the parts of the mesh. So we have here, and I'm gonna say bake all texture sets, not just the game guy. You could make the bake just for this one, but we're gonna bake also, he's gonna do for the sword too. So bake all materials. Just take a while, and you can see in real time the result. Okay, now it seems we have all the maps we need. So you can see the maps here. When you're in the material mode here, either in the 2D or the 3D view, you can change here to the single channel, the mesh maps. So the normal map, we don't have any normal information. Later we're going to talk about this, how you can create more information here inside Substance Painter. World normal map, which is a different type of normal map, is about the overall shape of the object, not little details. Ambient occlusion, so it works pretty much like ambient occlusion that we use for lighting, but here the information is used for the procedural materials that we're going to be creating. The curvature works is kind of like the opposite one of the ambient occlusion. Substance Painter uses the curvature to find the edges of the model, and so on and so forth. The material one is what actually we're gonna be creating the painting. So now we need to import the material IDs that we created for the character and for the sword, and we need to plug here in the select ID map on the right, because here we can see all the mesh maps and we didn't render this. We need to put the one we created. First we need to import the textures into Substance Painter, so we can click this little icon here, the import resources icon, and then add resources. So let's find the texture. So first the character ID map, and here is undefined. We're gonna define this as a texture, and import our resources for project. We're gonna be importing for this project, so import. And now we're gonna have here in our textures, so if I click here and select ID map, he's gonna appear here. He's here, game guy, ID map. So I have my ID map here. I have to do the same thing for the sword. So select the sword material. We need the ID map. We need to import the ID map. So sword, and define as a texture. Let's put in this project, import, and now if I click here, I should be seeing the sword here. So if we look here, now if we change here from material to mesh map to the ID, we are gonna be seeing the ID maps here. So it's just like we created in Maya. Is just like a flat color telling us and telling Substance Painter each part will have a different material. Keep in mind you don't need to use those colors for the selecting is for the material that are going to be creating. This is just to tell different parts of the geometry. In this case, I actually selected colors that are close to what I'm actually going to be creating. So let's go to material here. So we're gonna be working mostly with smart material. So let's go here to the smart material. As you notice, we can change here from 2D view to 3D view, only 2D view. This is very useful too. So we're here in smart material. Smart materials are a selection of filter generators and other elements in Substance Painter, and when put together they create a unique view, like a ruined metal, a scratched metal, like a torn fabric. And then you can use this because they are parametric, they are going to adapt to the geometry, and you can create very quickly very realistic materials. So the way we're going to be working here, we're going to be selecting the main smart materials that we want for this character here. If you hover around, you can see a preview of the material here. The ones I'm gonna be using for, let's start with the basic ones. Let's see, I wanna get a steel, something like a, maybe this is still here, maybe still dark, not exactly what I'm looking for. I want something like this one, still scratched. This is pretty good. So the way you work here, we're gonna click and drag the steel scratch to the layer here. So you're gonna wait a little bit, and it's gonna update, and you see on the sword, that's what I'm gonna be on the sword. Let's actually, I didn't notice that I was in the sword. Let's go to the game guy. We're gonna do the game guy first, and then we go to the sword, because the character is bigger, so it's easier to see what is happening. So this is what happens. He adapts to the geometry. Notice this is not just like a silver material. You have a bunch of imperfections, you have scratches. So, and this one is a little bit more subtle. It's still using like the geometry, the information, but you can see here how nicely like the specular, like little details, they follow the contour of the model. That's because it is using the information of the mesh maps we have, like the curvature and the ambient occlusion, so we can follow that and to create that nice look we have here. So this is gonna be one of our main materials. It's gonna be the ones of the main plaques, but it's not gonna be the only one, so we need some other ones here. So now we're gonna need something for the blue part of the character. So I'm gonna use, I think, the steel painted. Yeah, this is gonna look good. So I'm gonna put this here. Let's wait a little bit to update. And there we go. Again, it adapts nicely to the geometry. But as you can see, the new material totally overrides the one we had. You can turn this on and off and see the other one. Don't worry, because after we select the basic ones, we're going to use the material ID to tell Substance Painter to put each material in a specific part of the model. So I'm not totally happy with the color here. I want to make this a little bit more blue because it's a little bit greenish here. So if you look here in the Smart Material on the right, you see there's a little folder here. If you open the folder, you see a bunch of different things here. That's because, as I said, any Smart Material is a collection of filters and generators, and you can actually change elements of this. For example, if I click here in the dirt mask and I go to the mask editor here, I can actually change elements of this. I can, for example, change the global balance of the elements of the grunginess there. I can turn on or on off so we can see exactly what it's doing. It's kind of, you see, like this one was using the ambient occlusion. It's kind of very subtle, but you can see the little dirt there. In this case specifically, the only thing I want to change is the base paint. I have a fill color here. I'm gonna click here. I'm gonna just change, not the fill color, like the base paint. I'm gonna change the base color to more of a blue, like this one. Yeah, that looks more like my reference, so much better. We're gonna be doing a lot of this going inside the Smart Material to change, so we get exactly what we want. So this is the second material we're gonna use right now. So we have the still painted. Now we need something that is metallic but it's like gold going to the yellowish. So we had one here that looks like perfect, is the gold armor. So I'm gonna put this here. Take a little bit to process. Okay, it's kind of similar to the first one, but this one is gold. It's like, as the name implies, it's supposed to be used as a base material for a gold armor. And finally, I need a material for the visor. So actually, there's another one here that the name is actually pretty good. Is glass visor. So I'm gonna go here, put it. Looking pretty good. I think I'm just gonna make the base a little bit darker. So more like this. Okay, so now we have all the basic materials that we're gonna be using here. So how can we tell Substance Painter to put, for example, this material only on the visor? That's where we need to use the material IDs. So let's go show here the material IDs. We have here the IDs. We're gonna go here to, we're gonna start with, I'm gonna take out the visibility of the other ones here, and I'm gonna start with this one here. I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna add a mask with color selection. And then we click here in the color selection and we pick the color, and then we pick the color that corresponds to the material. In this case, I wanna apply the still scratched to this lighter part here. So I can select either here or here. And now if we go back to the material here, now you see the material is applied only in that part. Very powerful, huh? It works amazingly well. Pretty good. And okay, I have this. Now we're gonna put student, it's going to be the same process. Add mask with color selection. And we're going to pick the color. It'll be this one here. Looking good so far. So same thing here. Color selection. We need to be a material IDs. Pick color, gold. Looking good. And finally, the visor. And the visor is going to be this here. Whoops, didn't work out. I'm gonna go again. Pick color. And there we go. I forgot to turn on the visibility, my mistake. So it's working here. So let's focus on the 3D here and see what we have so far. As you can see, pretty good without doing any work on it. Just smart material is looking good so far. Let's do the material ID for the sword, and then we're going to start putting more details and working a little bit more with the rest of the texture. So 2D, 3D. So we have to change from the game guy material to the sword material. So we're gonna see this here. Remember we had created just a steel scratched. So we're gonna be using basically the same materials for the swords. We're gonna have the steel scratched, and we're gonna have the steel painted, and let's wait Substance Painter to read the material. Like the first time, we're gonna change the base color to something that more bluish, like this. And we're gonna have the gold armor. And if you take a look at the ID, we actually have a different material that's gonna be the blade. That's gonna be the only material that we're gonna have in the sword that we're not gonna have in the character. So in this case, I think I'm gonna use a slight different, maybe this silver armor here. This looks good, so I'm gonna use this one. So now we have all the materials we need for the sword. The process is going to be the same. We're going to be putting masks. Right button, add mask with color selection. So we pick the color we need here. And then we're going to do for each of our materials here. So this one is gonna be this one. and now we can see the result here. Boom, we have our sword here. Very nice. So as you can see, just with smart materials in a material ID, you can get a reasonably looking texture like super fast. But we're still gonna make more details here. First, the way we did here, applying with the material IDs, is one of the fastest way of doing this, but it's not the only way. Especially, the other way would be with the polygon fill tool that we can find here on the left. So let me show you how that would work. So for example, let's get some interesting material like this wood ship Nordic here. Let me put this here. So it's gonna take a while. Substance Painter is processing the material. So as you can see, as usual, like Substance Painter follows the model pretty well, looks pretty realistic. But what if we wanted this just only the armor should be made of wood here? And for some reason, let's imagine we don't have the material ID. The way to do it would be with the polygon fill tool. So I would right click here and I would still add a mask with color selection. But because I do not have a material ID, I'm gonna have to paint the mask. And keep in mind the mask it's always a black and white file. So black represents no material, white represents 100% of the material. So in this case, if you click here, we can actually paint our texture. So select here we're gonna be selecting the mask here. And we are gonna use the polygon fill tool. The polygon fill tool has some different modes. You can work in a triangle or a polygon, so you're gonna be painting polygons or triangles. But the most interesting one is the last one, which is the UV mesh tool. So or UV chunk tool, how they call it here. So in this case, I can select the ones I want here. So I click in this chunk here. So I'm gonna pretty much click all the chunks that I want this color to be. So this one here, this one here. So this one. You can do this in the viewport too. So for some reason it doesn't work as good as the viewport. Sometimes select the wrong one, but it's a good way to do it too. You see I selected one that I didn't want there. So and this one here. So now we pretty much painted our mask and telling Substance Painter put this material only in this part here. So this is an alternative, especially if you don't have a good material ID like we had here. So you could select with the UV chunk tool. The problem is, like, if you have a UV like this that's very well laid out, that's fine, that's really easy to do. But if you have like the sword where we used the automatic UV, it's a little bit harder because you have those like little chunks of polygons, so you're not sure which part of the model that represents. So that's the reason it's better to work with the material ID, but it's good to know you have the. So let's delete this wood material because it makes no sense to our character, and we're back to the original materials. So let's focus on the blue material for now, because I want to talk a little bit more about how you can customize this. As I said before, you can open the folder. In this case, the blue one is the steel painted stain smart material. We can turn on or off. If you click the folder, you get the elements that are part of the smart material. In this case, we're gonna focus on the edges here. If you turn on or off, you're gonna see like the little white spots are gone. So I'm gonna turn this on again. And we have two elements here. We have a ground map and a metal edge. If I turn on and off the metal edge, you can see that's the main responsible for those spots there. If I click here, I get all my attributes here, and we can change a lot here. For example, I can change the contrast. I'm here in 0.8. I could have much less contrast. Then this metal gets much dirtier than it was. Let's go back to a little bit like what we had before. We can change the grunge amount. We can make this even dirtier, but you see the different one is not as much dirtier as if I were just changing the contrast. So you have a lot of power here, so you have to play a little bit, explore the smart material, changing the settings, and then you can create some very unique looks just changing the settings of the smart materials. So most smart materials, they try to like paint the whole mesh, but some of the smart materials, they do not fill the whole polygons. They only apply some little details. So let's look for a example of this. We have both the dirt and the dust. They work in this way. For example, let me put the dirt here on the game guy. Wait a little bit. So as the name implies, is pretty much like mud throw at the character, and as you can see, it doesn't really like fill the whole character, so you don't really need to select to put a mask to limit the smart material, unless you wanted to have the dirty only one part, but that wouldn't be very realistic. This one in specific is very interesting, but it's a little bit too much for the character we're creating, so we're gonna delete this. The second one, the dust, is a little bit more interesting. It looks more like something was sprayed on the character, and you see this like yellow spots. The way we have here is a little bit too much. So if we turn off here, we can see the elements. The dust base is like the big speckles. We can click here on the mask and just see the dirt. If we change the scale here, if we have more scale, you have much tinier speckles. So I think that looks more interesting for what we're doing. And we could change the base color to something that would make more sense for our color here. So like maybe dark, but more like purplish, just to have like some little things happening here. Let's see, here. So I don't know, the guy was like fighting around something and got a little of the paint of that surface in his metal armor. just to make this a little bit more interesting. So that's the second type of smart material. So now let's talk about a different way of applying smart material. We can apply smart material using a smart mask. Instead of creating a mask just to limit the material. So the way smart masks work, you can see a bunch of masks here. Let's take a look here. Like dirty dry, dirty cavities, gun edges, for example, this one here. Edges, strong. They're pretty powerful because basically they let you mask anything that you have, any material. It doesn't need to be smart material, it can be a normal material. And then you're gonna mask with this, and you're gonna have like the material only on the white parts. Sometimes inside the smart materials, part of them are smart masks, but you can use on your own. So to make this a little bit clear, so let's get this copper here. I'm gonna put this copper here. So I have the copper around the whole object. And now I'm gonna get a smart mask. So let's see what I could do. Let's get this edge strong. I'm gonna put here. So this is what happens. He uses the map to find the edges and create like this procedural mask, so you're gonna see the copper only in this part. In this case, he's using the curvature map, so we can actually change this more or less contrasts, balance. Make this very subtle. So just some details, like you have this kind of rust thing around parts of the metal in the armor. You put even less here. So this is another way to use smart materials and smart masks to create those really nice parametric effects here. And remember, everything that we create here, you can make this stronger or less. You can make weaker. For example, instead of 100, I can make this a little bit more subtle, like 53%. And likewise with the dust here, I could put this much less here. So that's another way to use smart masks and smart materials. Finally, we want to create more detail in the character. The character is looking good, texture looking good, but I would like to create more details without having to actually model more stuff. And the way to do that is to work on the normal map. We have to create more normals here. So the way I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna create a new layer. So let's create a new layer, and then we're gonna add a paint filter. And let's rename this extra normals. And let's start creating our new normals here. So to understand a little bit what we're going to be doing here, let's turn off the other materials. So we have this white material here. We're going to select extra normal here. We're going to use the paint tool. We're going to go to hard surfaces. Here we have a bunch of hard surfaces, normal brushes that we can use. Okay, so what we want to do is get one of those normal brushes and put in our painting brush here. And we have to change some of the settings of what we're painting here. First, we have this red color that's kind of relevant. We're not going to be painting any color here. It could be white, it could be anything. The most important thing is the material here. This is going to tell us what channel we are painting on. So we're not going to be painting the color, nor the height, nor the rough, nor the metal. We're going to be only painting the normal. That's NRM here. It means normal. So we have this. Let's go up here. Here you can change the size of the brush, but we can change interactively here. So it's kind of relevant here. The one important thing is to change the spacing. We can make this more spaced. We don't want a continuous flow. If you're actually painting strokes, that's good to have this continuous flow, but here we are using almost like stamps, so it's good they are separated. And we're gonna go down here and we're gonna change the alpha. We want an alpha that is not like there's no feather around. We can actually go here and we want something that is just a block. And that's, let's see if I remember where is that. Should be this. We just want a nice square. So there's no feather around, so when we use the hard surface, we're going to be using everything here. It's not going to be cut by the feathering. So okay, so we go down here. You see the normal map here. We need to pick one of those and plug here. So I'm gonna pick this one here. I'm click and drag, put on the normal here. And now if I hover around, I see that brush here, and I can put anywhere in the character. We can change the size here. Changing the size here is the same of changing here on the top. And you can change the flow, but the best way is with the shortcuts. If you press Control and the left click, you can actually rotate the brush. And if you press Control and the right button, mouse button, you can actually make this smaller or bigger. So what is gonna happen here? We're gonna start painting. When you're painting like this kind of stuff that you want a precise position, it's actually good to not have perspective. Here I'm in even though like I can snap on front or in the side, pressing shift, he's gonna snap to a side view. You have perspective. As you can see, like this feet is like not in the same line of that. We can actually change this from perspective view to orthographic view, and then we have this perfect like non-perspective view. You can still tumble around, but now you don't have a perspective, and that's what you want when you're trying to do stuff like this. So for example, I'm gonna put this one, I think here. Let me rotate a little bit, then let's boom, there you go. Have a nice detail here. Let me put the perspective again so you can see. So we created more detail on our character without having to do extra modeling. So that's like super powerful, especially for doing like science fiction stuff. You can create all those details without having to actually model. And that's really powerful. And later when I finish this, I'm going to show how the smart materials, they can interact with the new normals you're creating. So now I'm gonna create a bunch of new details to make my character more interesting, just using what I have here. So the process is gonna be always like get something here, plug in my normal here, and then I'm gonna paint there. Nothing too complicated. Remember, you can always turn on the symmetry. If you click here, you get this red line here, and whatever you do in one side, you're gonna be the same in the other one. Other than those two here, I think most of what I'm gonna be doing is gonna be symmetrical, so I'm gonna let this on. You can always turn that off. Okay, now we have our normal. We have a lot of extra detail in our model without having to model anything extra. So let's go turn on all the materials. Both in the sword and in the game guide. Take a little while to process everything. So as you can see, the normal map actually interacts with the light. You see the details in the model, but it's still not perfect. What is the main problem here? The smart materials are not really interacting with the normal maps. So to understand what I'm talking about, let's look here in any part of the silver armor here where we have two surfaces getting together here. For example, let's make this brush smaller so it's not in our way here. So if you notice here, when this part here that's a little bit out, this part here meets this part here, the metal gets a little bit dirty, it gets a little bit whitish here because the smart material is actually following the ambient occlusion, so you get this nice parametric dirty here. We should see the same thing with the normal map details that we created, but we are not seeing anything, like the smart material is not interacting with. So how can we fix that? The way you do that is using an anchor point, because the problem is Substance Painter works from the top to bottom. So to have the smart materials working with this, we would need to have the extra normals here on the bottom. But then the smart materials will, you're not going to be seeing the extra material. They're not going to be seeing the normals. And if we are in the top, we see the normals, but we don't have the interaction. The solution to do this is to create a duplicate. I'm going to create a copy here. And then we're going to put the copy in the bottom here. Because we need the information of this normal, so the smart material will use the information. It needs to be in the bottom, but we need the original in the top so we can see here. So then we click here in the copy, right click, and we create this last selection here where we can see add an anchor point. We're going to create an anchor point. An anchor point is a way for any other layer to get the information of the layer where we put an anchor point. So in this case, we're going to look the smart materials that we want to interact with the normal, and then we're going to tell them to check this anchor point here. So basically, we're going to be working with the steel scratched, which is the silver armor here. And we have to open the folder here so we see the elements that we want to mess around. So this is made, the steel scratch is made of 1, 2, 3 elements. So let's see which one is the most relevant. This dirt here is the one that we get the most details. So what we're gonna do, we click here in the mask of the dirt, and then we click in the dirt here. Then here we in the properties panel, we're gonna go down here, and we have this here, micro normal. The micro normal is where you're gonna tell Substance Painter to read the anchor point. We click here, and instead of use resources, we go anchor point. He's gonna list all the anchor points we have in this project. So we're gonna extra normals, copy one. So now we have the anchor point here. We're gonna tell we are referencing the normal channel. Referenced channel is not going to be the color, it's going to be the normal. Alpha behavior, just let as it is. And then we have to go here on the top, and we have to be sure you're gonna have this micro detail here. Sometimes it's closed. Usually it's before the image input. So you open here, and then you make sure the micro normal is on. So it takes a little while to read here, and now it is interacting. So this one is very subtle, but you see here this whitish when encounters here. Now we have the same thing in the normal. For example, now inside here you have this whitish stuff around here, like dirty. If you have the micro normal off, you don't have that. So this is the main difference. We're gonna do the same for the copper one here. So we can go to the curvature, and here it works a little bit different because this is a smart mask, and we just need to use micro details. We're gonna go on, then we're gonna go micro normal, anchor point, same thing. So make sure you change from base color to normal. And now we're gonna see the difference here. You can see this little rust detail we had here. It was the copper with the smart material. Now we can see the rustiness around the normal here. The details we created with the normal. It's not gonna appear in everything because this is kind of subtle, but you can mostly see in a little bit more curved areas, a little bit rustiness here. You can see pretty well here the rustiness around this part and this part here. So very powerful. So I'm not gonna do the same for the normal map details in my sword. So there we have it, the sword with the details as well as the whole character using anchor points and the normal maps. As you could see, it's a question of opening the smart materials and trying to find the element that actually is going to interact better with the normal map, and then you have to apply the anchor point and the micro details. So now we have our final character, like the texture is done in the character and the sword. Let's go back to perspective view so we can see a little bit better. Now it looks better, like proper. You can see all the details of the character. We can put here in just 3D view so we can see even better. Looking pretty good. Let's understand exactly what we created here. So let's go back to the 2D. So remember when we started here, we had the mesh maps. Those are maps that they were baked based only on the surface, the world space map, the ambient occlusion, the curvature, and we had the ID map that we used to tell Substance Painter where we put the material. But now the end result, using the smart materials, we have a bunch of different textures. If we put everything together in a renderer, that's what you get. But we can see the separate textures we have. First, we have the base color. This is just the color of the texture of the character. This is also called albedo color or albedo channel. We have the height map, and we have the roughness map. The roughness map together with the metallic map, they change the way the specular reflection on the object is going to be. It's a more advanced way of doing what in the old types of materials we only had a specular channel. Here we use both the roughness and the metalness to get the more metallic look of the texture. And then here we have the metallic. Basically, the metallic tells the renderer which part's going to be reflective and which part's not going to be reflective. And the roughness tells the renderer which part is going to be shiny or which part's going to be more like blurred in the reflection. That's a simplification of the system, but that's kind of how it goes. Here is the normal map, which is different than the normal map that was baked based on the geometry. This is the normal map that we created here, painting extra details just using the hard surfaces brushes. So that's everything together. We get this nice character here. So now we need to export the textures. So let's go to File, Export Textures, and we need to do some changes here. I'm gonna change my folder here. Then I'm gonna change from JPEG to maybe PNG and 16 bits. And then we need to be sure in the config here you have the correct template. In this case, we're gonna be using the Arnold 5 AI standard because we're gonna be plugging the textures back into Maya. And you can see here, we can actually see how many texture sets we're going to be exporting. We're going to be exporting 2 in this case, the game guy and the sword. And if you open here, you can see all the textures that we're going to be exporting: base color, metalness, roughness, etc. So let's just click export and wait for the rendering. So now the textures are rendered. So let's check what we have here. So we have the main character albedo, the color, base color texture. We have the height map. We have the metalness. We have the normal map. And we have the roughness map. And we're going to have the same thing for the sword. The base color, the height, the metalness, the normal, and the roughness. So now let's start Maya and plug the materials in an Arnold standard material. So we're here back in Maya and we're gonna create a material using the textures we just created in Substance Painter. So we're gonna open Hypershades and we're gonna create a new Arnold shader. It's gonna be a AI standard surface shader. Now it's just a question of selecting the correct textures and plugging in the correct channel. But there's a lot of little tweaks you have to do in the configuration, so please pay attention. So first we're gonna use in the base part, we're gonna plug the texture in the color. That's gonna be the base color. So we're gonna select our base color texture. And let's look here at the color space. We have by default sRGB, And that's what we're going to be using for the base color, but only for the base color. For every single other one, we're going to have to change this, and that's going to be crucial to get the correct rendering in Arnold. So let's come back here, and now let's put the roughness. The roughness is gonna be put in the specular roughness. Do not mix this with the diffuse roughness. That's not the correct place. The correct place is in the specular roughness. And then we're gonna put our texture here. So roughness. So okay, we're gonna have to change the color space from sRGB to raw. And then this is super important, you have to open the color balance part and you have to check alpha is luminance. This is also crucial. If you don't do the raw and alpha luminance, the rendering is not gonna appear correct. So now we go back, we're gonna put the metallic in the metalness, base metalness. So let's select the texture here, metalness. And again, we are gonna do the same thing. We're gonna change this to raw. And then we're gonna change, we're gonna check the alpha is luminance. Now we're gonna come back here and we could put the height map in a displacement shader, but because of the way we did the character, it's not gonna be really needed. So we're gonna ignore, but usually you would put the height map in a displacement shader and you would do the same thing. You would change raw and then alpha is luminance, you would check that. The last thing we need to do for this character, specifically, we need to do a normal. So to create a normal map here, it's a little bit different. You don't have a simple place to plug like in the other materials. We actually have to come here and use a Maya, utilities, a bump 2D node. So you click here, we get a bump 2D node. And then here in bump value, we're gonna put our texture. So we're gonna find our normal map. Take a little bit here, let me organize this. And we have to do some changes here in the bump 2D. We're gonna use as tangent space normals. That's very important, otherwise he's gonna read incorrectly the texture. And then finally we have to come here in Arnold and uncheck flip R channel and flip G channel. And now that we did this, we get the out normal and we connect to the normal camera. So now we have the final material here. So I'm gonna create the same thing for the sword and then we're gonna apply to the character. So I skipped the video and I created another Arnold material for the sword. So now we have the game guy material and the sword material. So now let's apply that to our character and to our sword. So first the game guy material and the sword material. Of course we're not seeing anything because we don't have any light, but I already had created here a Arnold dome light, so we can unhide here and we see the result. This is a simple light with a background applied in the color, so we have something a little bit similar to what we had in Substance Painter. You can see the result in the viewport is already kind of nice. You get the effect of the normal map, etc., but it's still a little bit exaggerated. If you want to see this in the Arnold, we can just go to the Arnold shader here, Arnold viewport, play preview, and we get a pretty nice rendering. You can see with the correct selection of the channels and the settings, the Substance Painter textures can work beautifully well with Arnold. And now we are ready to work with this character, either to animate or to render. So this is our final Arnold render of the character. In the case of your own character, you're not gonna be rendering a turntable like this because this is a class about animation for a game. I only need to see the textures that you created in Substance Painter and then the material that you're gonna create in Maya for the character. If you wanna render a turntable, that would be great. I would give you extra points, but it's not really needed. So that's all for this week, and see you guys next time. Bye.